Stephen, thank you so much for meeting with us today.
Thank you.
Could we talk a little bit about Ireland as a location for investment from U.S. companies?
Well, absolutely. There's a tremendous amount of investment already in Ireland. Companies look at this as a doorway to Europe. Actually, it's even a platform to do business in that whole hemisphere, Europe, Middle East, and Africa. At this point, the Department of Commerce calculates, the economists say there's 146 billion US dollars of investment in Ireland. And this demonstrates how some key sectors of, particularly American multinationals, have ended up basing themselves there as part of the European activity.
What are some of the advantages that Ireland offers?
Well, of course, English speaking, cultural affinity. I think it doesn't hurt. I tell people the doorways aren't just the beautiful Georgian lawyers and accountants that they go in to see their offices, but also it's the pubs and the nice hospitality, the ease that Irish really have at putting people putting them on a relaxing footing. So business has been very easy for people to do on a human level. But I think as well they've created an environment. Low taxes, corporate taxes are 12.5%, and incentives on top of that for things like research and development, that it created a wonderful base for people to grow the business. As a result, Irish, and from the period of the Celtic Tiger in the 90s, they've developed skills and a highly educated workforce that in addition now has the experience to be able to manage and work in a global corporate setting.
You were saying earlier that they're not so much into manufacturing right now as they are into other types of service centers, et cetera, for corporations?
Well, I think what happened was the cost advantages that they had also in the 90s have started to disappear as the economy grew, and particularly in the noughties, as it really accelerated, like much of the world economy. Ireland began a construction boom, and that construction boom fed into a property bubble. So much like the United States, Ireland ended up having very high costs driven by high land prices, high construction prices, but it meant all across the board, electricity, all sorts of other factors were of extremely high cost. And so that ended up making difficulty for Ireland. This is something that the recession has abruptly changed. And it meant that, that companies that are coming more recently, including the ones I described before, they've managed to begin to reinvest, and Ireland's regaining a lot of key advantages. But cost of wages, these things, they've moved up the value-added chain, so it's at a different level at this time.
So it's more affordable than it was at the peak of the bubble?
It's more affordable, but I guess to go back to your point about manufacturing, it makes it harder to have large-scale, low-cost manufacturing. So some of the computer facilities that they once had, companies, Apple, IBM, Dell, they've ended some of their large-scale manufacturing. But what they've kept in keeping the workers there, they've kept their operations, the call centers, the technical support. And they still continue to have their Europe, Middle East, and Africa operations. And have ended up attracting the newer age internet companies. So Google, eBay, PayPal, Amazon, all of those companies now also have headquarters operations in Ireland.
Could you talk a little bit about how Ireland can be a gateway to Europe in terms of business?
Well, absolutely. I think that what we're seeing now is like a second wave of companies that work with these others that I've mentioned, looking to be their suppliers in Europe and beyond, and they're following them. And it's because of the rents dropping and the costs going lower, it is an ideal way for these smaller firms also to think about coming in and supporting the global companies that they work with in the United States. I think that it's beginning to attract companies that we were surprised to see. And I think that this is the time, as you buy low and looking at your rents and your properties, it's important to think about Ireland. I guess the other factor that distinguishes it from the UK is it's part of the Eurozone. So when you do your pricing, you do all the things, your calculations, all the work to get set up, you just do it in Ireland, then you're good for the rest of Europe outside of the pound UK area. So I think that's also helped Ireland a great deal.
Are there any, you said you're surprised at some of the companies. Could you cite any of those specifically? Or?
Well, I'm thinking, I won't name names, but the small private company that supports a larger computer company came to us saying, well, we're going to set up, and we've already begun to open our office. And we asked them if they had seen all the usual Irish agencies as well as us to do this. And they said, no, we decided we were going to do it on our own. And we liked the feel of the Irish city where we were going to go and open the office. And then we reeled off to them all the incentives that they might have. They were surprised to learn that and even more pleased that they had come to Ireland. So I think it's an example of the word getting out. I think people do realize that Ireland's a good place to go to Europe. I guess the other thing I'd say, though, it's not ideal for all companies. Europe at this point, with the dollar getting stronger, it might be the time really for companies to consider how that fits into their global strategy.
What are some of the incentives that they offer? Can you give an example?
Well, I think the Irish government can speak better for that, but my understanding is they will help, basically flexibly help a company set up. They'll talk about their taxes. They'll put them in contact with the right people. And we try to be part of that effort to help American business succeed in their plans. And they understand also they're in a global competitive space, and they want to be as good as any other location that these companies might consider when they're starting to do business overseas. Just in the last week, United Technologies has arrived. When I say last week, on Monday, they made an announcement in tandem with efforts with the Irish government to do energy research. Things like work on the smart grid, try to get a home integrated. And UT, I know, has nothing outside of the United States except China. So they've chosen Ireland as their European base. So this is, and I think they've done that because the Irish government has created an energy center that would also support their corporate efforts.
What about in terms of U.S. companies selling products to Ireland, exporting to Ireland?
Now you're to where I have to go to work. We've had a tough time within the Irish market. I think partly it was because they've been so focused on exports, and the large American companies that came in were also similarly looking at an export base. So bulk pharmaceuticals, or the Apple computers for all of Europe. They would go out of these centers. It wasn't so much selling into the Irish market, and it's a very small market. But I think smaller businesses want that immediate payback. And we're looking now, as part of the bigger effort to increase exports, to grow not only the Irish market, but then Irish as a base to the UK, as a base to the continental Europe.